gentlemen, what is going on? It's another episode of the Shook Sports Take podcast. I hope you're all doing well. Today is the final division of the Eastern Conference, which is the Southeast Division. It consists of the Atlanta Hawks, the Charlotte Hornets, the Miami Heat, the Orlando Magic, and the Washington Wizards. So this one will be over those teams. I've already done the other two divisions of the Eastern Conference, so please feel free to go watch those if you haven't. And then the Western Conference will follow this shortly. We're going to start with those five teams today. The first being the Atlanta Hawks. This division certainly has some bright spots and some dimmer spots. But overall, I think this has been the least surprising of the divisions. I think that a lot of these teams are hitting exactly where we thought they would hit. No real big letdowns, but also no big surprises. But we'll kick things off right away with the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks were one of the busier teams at the deadline. Obviously, before the deadline, they moved off Trae Young, which is something we all kind of felt was going to happen. Doesn't mean that it was fortunate, because I felt like Trae Young could have been a real superstar at Atlanta, and it just didn't play out that way. Obviously, his last few years have been a struggle for him there. But they also moved off Kristaps Porzingis, who they brought in to start the season. But that's a lot of praise to Onyeka Okongwu, who's had a great year. He's developed really well. I'll get into his numbers in a minute. But then they also made moves to bring in Jonathan Kuminga, which I thought was a great deal on their part. He looked great in his debut just the other night. I think he had 27 points. Maybe it was 21. But he had a good game, a really solid game. And we know that if Jonathan Kuminga can find real minutes actively playing all the time, that he's going to be a problem, and that it just wasn't working in Golden State. But from a team perspective, they are 29-31, looking at 9th in the Eastern Conference. It's exactly where we expected them to be. There was a chance, I think I said earlier, that there's a chance that this team might slip in just the lower end of the playoffs and not have to go through the play-in this year. That's not going to be that case. They are still struggling. Them and the Miami Heat, man, they just cannot find a way to get out of this play-in. And it's kind of the cycle of mediocrity. But they do have a lot of bright spots. They're starting to move in the right direction. I think this Atlanta Hawk team is, again, striving to be better than they have been. And it's starting to shift in the rosters and the way that the team looks. Now, what do they do well? They lead the league in assists per game at 30. So they move the ball really well. They don't. Jalen Johnson is obviously the clear-cut number one option, but they don't have a lot of selfish scorers, if that makes sense. Not that a lot of teams do, but they're not forcing the ball into one guy's hand all the time. Again, Jalen Johnson gets a lot of looks, but he's not getting the ball every possession. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has done a lot of scoring, and that's another reason they were comfortable moving off Trae Young, because Alexander-Walker, who was coming in to be that sixth man, has really excelled in the minutes that Trae was out. And he kind of just took the starting job from him, and that's been really impressive. When you look at Jalen Johnson, we're looking at 23 points a game, 10 rebounds, and just under 8 assists. He is an All-Star, which is something that I said I was fairly confident would happen at the start of the season. We've seen that now, so pretty cool that that played out in my favor. Andrew Nembhard, on the other hand, we won't talk about that one. But, Jalen Johnson has excelled this season. He's taken over as the number one scoring option on the Hawks. His athleticism is just so impressive. He's shooting the three a lot better as well. It's only 34%, but considering the fact that he's shooting 4 of them a game, that's actually getting better. He's looking more confident in that shot, also off the dribble rather than just catch and shoot. But then again, you pair that with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's scoring just under 20 points a game, and his contributions on defense are fantastic. The energy he brings. There was a lot of Wolves fans that weren't very happy that they let him walk, but they couldn't afford to keep him. And so Na's been great. Dyson Daniels still doing his thing defensively, and then we get into Onyeka Okongwu, 16.7 7 rebounds a game, shooting 38% from 3. He has really developed as a scoring center. As a 5, he is still doing his job defensively, but the reason they were no longer needed the services of Kristaps Porzingis is because Okongwu has really exploded in a way that I think they probably thought they had another year or so to see that level of play from him. But he's just been great, man. And then, of course, they brought in McCollum from the Trae Young trade. I don't think he's been He's been serviceable. That's what they need him to be. He's not going to come in and light it up every night. He's going to have a few big nights, but he's probably not staying on this roster anyway. But yeah, Kuminga was a big score for them. It was 27, 7, and 4 in their first game. The more minutes he plays, I think the more we're going to start to see the rise of Jonathan Kuminga, that potential that we've been waiting to see in Golden State and never played out. We all know that, again, the super freak athlete, natural scorer, wants the ball in his hands, and I think there's been some questions about his mentality, but I think that he just really didn't enjoy being in Golden State these last 2 years, and I think he's going to thrive in Atlanta, where he's getting to actively play a lot of minutes. So this Atlanta Hawks team is still looking at the play-in this year, but I think next year, with a good draft, and you don't know what moves they make in free agency, but this Hawks team is finally trending in the right direction for the first time since that Eastern Conference Final appearance. And the last thing I will say is that I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog. It's kind of unfortunate that Zachary Richeche has not really played out in the manner that we would have expected. He's only averaging 10 points on the season. He just isn't really... In the run of draft picks, the first overall picks that you saw, Atlanta got really unlucky in the 1 year that they landed that number 1 pick, because Richeche is not even close to the level of someone. We're talking about Cade Cunningham. We're talking about Paolo Banchero. Victor Wembanyama. Like, we're talking about some really, really talented... I mean, Cooper Flag this year. We're talking about some superstars in the making, and Zachary Richeche just isn't that. And so that kind of is an unfortunate hit on the Atlanta Hawks record. But overall, like I said, they're trending in the right direction. I think this Atlanta Hawk team could start to make moves next year and the year after, and we could see something special from this younger group of players if they're able to keep it together. Bring us to the Charlotte Hornets, who are kind of a wild story at this point. They started really bad. It was not good. But then they kind of got healthy. They turned this corner at the new year, and they won 9 straight games, then dropped to Detroit before winning again. And I could go through the whole thing. They've won 12 of their last 15. I think the biggest benefit to this Charlotte team is they just have so many guys out there just playing ball. Con Caneppel, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller. Those 4 guys are just out there scoring at will, doing whatever they need to do to put the ball in the basket and win games. And that freedom has been very good for this team, who's back on a 2-game winning streak. Con Caneppel is really giving Cooper Flag a run for the money for Rookie of the Year. I think Flag's going to end up winning it. But Con is giving him a run, 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game, shooting 43% from 3 and 50% from the floor. He just looks like he can score at every level. His mid-range is polished. His 3, and there's no doubt he can shoot the 3. He just feels like very dangerous every time he has it in his hands. And then, of course, LaMelo Ball's starting to figure it out again. It's been a little disappointing at the start of the year. But he's just averaging under 20, shooting 36.3% from 3 and 40% from the floor. But he, again, continues to create for his teammates, 7.3 assists on the season on average. And then you pair that with Brandon Miller in the backcourt, who is a sniper from downtown. He's averaging 20. And again, then you mix that with the athleticism of Miles Bridges, who is doing a lot of good things. They've tightened up their defense a lot. That has certainly helped them. Only 10th in opponent points given up in the per game, which has helped them a lot. I think the only thing that's really holding this team back now is the lack of depth. You look at Diabate, who's still a good piece. Of course, they traded for Kobe White, which is, I think, going to take a little bit more time to adjust, but that was a good move, in my opinion, for them. But then, at this point, Grant Williams has played fine. He's actually played pretty good minutes when he's come in, and he's done a good job. But objectively, this Charlotte team just doesn't have the pieces if they wanted to compete. Now, I do think that they might be one of the 2 teams that comes in and goes into the playoffs through the play-in in this Eastern Conference. I think they're going to ride the wave of being hot. And the fact that they shoot the 3 so well is very dangerous as well. It means if they get hot on the night in one game, you're toast. And so I think they actually will end up making the playoffs, but they don't have the depth or the quality. When you go, it's probably an 8-man rotation in the playoffs, and when you go into guys 6, 7, and 8, I think that's where the other teams are going to beat them in the Eastern Conference. But Charlotte has been very surprising, and it's only felt like a matter of time that these guys did put it together, because I think, you looked at LaMelo Ball and you looked at Brandon Miller and the talent that is there matched with some of the pieces I spoke about already, and then you brought in Concanapple. I think it was only a matter of time till they figured it out. I didn't expect it to be this fast. I thought it would probably be year 2 of Con if they kept, or maybe year 3, depending on what they ended up doing with LaMelo this offseason. I don't know if they're going to keep LaMelo Ball still, but I think they finally have something going in their favor. They're 28-31, 10th in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, they win one game and Atlanta drops one game. That changes. They go to 9th, but they definitely look like they're going to make the play, and they're playing their best basketball now. And I think that this team's going to end up being in the playoffs, which is kind of a cool thing for Charlotte. It's a franchise that's had a rough period outside of like Kemba Walker. So it would be cool to see them there. I think they're going to get smacked. Maybe they take a game or two, but because they probably they'll end up running into Detroit, who are just unreal. So again, it's a very good, successful season in terms of what they were looking at the start of it. But I think Charlotte could have a real opportunity to grow this offseason if they make the right moves and just find ways to improve those guys off the bench. Miami Heat would be the next in this division, and this is just the same old story that we've seen. They sit 8th in the Eastern Conference, just outside the playoffs. And it doesn't look like they're going to end up being in the playoffs unless they make it through the play-in. And while they are the second highest scoring team per game on average in the league, there just doesn't feel like there's a consistent amount of success or sustainability in the way that they get their wins. Bam Adebayo is playing well, 18-9. Norman Powell was an All-Star this year, which is really dope because I thought he should have been there last year, 22-3. But he's just scoring at a really efficient rate. Just under 40% from 3 and 47% from the floor. Norman Powell is just out there getting buckets right now, and that's exactly what Miami brought him in for, is to do that exact thing. Wiggins is playing fine, his normal standard 16-5. Hawkes is to continue to be a spark off the bench. I talked about him in the first video because I thought he was playing really well at the start of the season. Obviously, it's cooled down with Hero and Jovic getting healthy, and his minutes have gone down, but he still played a solid amount of basketball. Khalil Ware's averaging almost a double-double. Mitchell continuing to run the offense. Davion Mitchell, who plays great defense, 9 and 7 on a nightly basis. And then Tyler Hero still scoring 20, but he can't stay healthy, and that's killed them a lot. I could see a situation where Miami move off of Tyler Hero this offseason. I don't know. It just hasn't seemed to benefit Miami to continue to stay in this state of mediocrity. Kind of same thing with Atlanta, but at least Atlanta looks like they're trending in the right direction, whereas Miami just feels like they're content sitting just here. There was always the rumors that they were going to make the move for Kevin Durant, and then obviously Houston got it done, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of ambition in this Miami front office. And it was even like that when Jimmy Butler was taking this team to the NBA Finals twice in 5 years. There was never really a backing by the front office, and they were just content to see what happens, and it so happened that prime Jimmy Butler was good enough to get them to that final with the supporting cast that he had. But if you look at a lot of those guys, they didn't do anything outside of Miami. Caleb Martin struggled, Gabe Vincent has struggled, but both of those guys were great in Miami. So not that this is just to sit here and talk about Jimmy Butler, although I could. But yeah, Miami have always kind of felt like they are content with what they have, and they won't make any drastic changes they don't want to risk making themselves worse in order to potentially become better. And I think at some point they have to just look at this roster and go, all right, let's suck for 2 years and then see what happens when we start to accumulate these picks and get some young youth into this team, because they have a couple of decent pieces, but they don't have a true star. Like Tyler Hero's good, Norman Powell scores at a very high rate, but neither of those guys are stars. And Bam Adebayo isn't cutting it as the one. He'd be a great number 2 on a team. He's not the one. And so this Miami team, they just need to probably move off Bam, move off Hero, and see what they can get in the offseason, have a year or two to rebuild, and then start to see it go forward. That progress, that steady progress toward being a good team again, is what I think is needed in Miami. Now, Eric Spoelstra can probably still get the best out of a bad unit. And I think the way I would compare that is kind of like Mike Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was always just good enough to make the playoffs or make the play-in and get bounced in the first round after that. Like Eric Spoelstra is going to be a good enough coach to continue to get you there, but he isn't going to be able to win you a ship without the right players. And so that's kind of where Miami is at the moment. They're just going to continue to be mediocre until that decision is made. But they look at again 31-28 and 8th in the Eastern Conference. They'll be in the play and they might squeak into the playoffs, but I don't have a lot of high hopes for them beating either the 1 or the 2 seed if it plays out that way. Orlando Magic have been rather disappointing. I said in my early season predictions video that is on this channel if you want to go see that I thought they would end up being the 3 or the 4 seed in this weak Eastern Conference. Now, at the time it looked weaker than it has been this season because the Boston Celtics have stayed unbelievably competitive without Jason Tatum. A lot of that credit goes to Jaylen Brown. The Raptors and the Philadelphia 76ers have been better than the Orlando Magic, and that's not something I would have said after they made the move for Desmond Bane. And it kind of is unfortunate for the Magic a little bit because Paolo Banchero, we know, can be inconsistent. Sometimes he goes for 35, sometimes he goes for 11, and that's fine when Wagner is there to pick up that slack and help out in the extra effort and find the scoring as a different option because they kind of play this 1A, 1B role in Orlando, but Wagner has missed a lot of time with separate injuries. Right now it's an ankle injury, but he had that knee injury earlier in the season, so it's been a real struggle for them, kind of like it was last year, to just stay healthy. But Bane has been good. Desmond Bane is looking at 20 points and 4 assists, shooting 38% from 3 and 48% from the floor. That is fair enough considering what you brought him in to do, to be that scoring guard to match Jalen Suggs. And he can only score so many points playing alongside Banchero and Franz Wagner. So I didn't expect his numbers to shoot through the roof when he left Memphis because he's still kind of playing that similar third option that he is now. And so he's done his job. I think Banchero could, while his numbers look good, 21, 8, and 5, shooting 45%. He's not shooting well from 3, but that's never really what you're expecting. He kills in the mid-range and he gets to the basket well. But, again, it's just that inconsistency. We need to see Paolo Banchero play at the highest level for stretches of games, not every few games. And that's the only thing that I think really holds him back is the fact that it doesn't seem to be like it happens often enough. But then you have the other pieces around them. Jalen Suggs has continued to play good defense, not really provided a huge scoring outburst. Occasionally he does. He had a great game early in the season against the Knicks where he went like 25 in the first half and then didn't score for the rest of the game. But Anthony Black has taken steps forward. He's averaging 15 points with 4 rebounds, shooting 34% from 3, which is up from last season. Wendell Carter averaging just 11 and 7 in terms of points and rebounds. Tristan Da Silva has still not taken that step that I thought we were going to see out of him, shooting 37% from 3, averaging only 8 points. That's rough. But then they did get Mo Wagner back, which has been helpful. He's not played a whole lot of minutes, but he has been, and we know he can be a good piece to this team when he gets healthy and when he gets going back again. But overall, I just expected a lot more out of this Magic team considering those 3 guys. But I think it's kind of the philosophy that there's only one rock. There's only one ball to score. And I don't know how much, Banchero can pass the ball, and he's, again, averaging 5 assists, but Bane doesn't pass the ball at the highest level, and Wagner would rather create for himself. So I just feel like maybe they would have been better off going and getting a true facilitator to pair with Jalen Suggs rather than a guy like Desmond Bane. I still think that the 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane is completely crazy, considering the fact that Luka Doncic went for 1 and Anthony Davis, admittedly, I understand that Anthony Davis is good, and nothing is going to look good compared to that trade, but even Trae Young was 1 first-round pick. It's just that's a whole nother video. That the trade market in the NBA seems very busted. The valuation of players seems very off rather than what it should be. But yeah, the Magic sitting at 26th, 7th in the Eastern Conference. It's not good enough in my opinion. But I think some of it is that they can't catch a break. I think they've got really unlucky with injuries, and they have just struggled to see a consistent run of play. Head to the U.S. Capitol for the Washington Wizards, who have had an extremely poor season once again, 16-41, and they made some moves at the deadline. They brought in Anthony Davis and they brought in Trae Young. Neither of those guys have played basketball for them yet. Anthony Davis has already been ruled out for the rest of the year, and it was strange because I actually think that this Wizards roster was starting to move in the right direction. Keyshawn George had been playing pretty well. Alex Sarr was having a breakout year. He's got 17-7 and shooting 49% from the field, averaging 2 blocks a game. Second in the NBA. Like, Alex Sarr is starting to look really good. And then, the rest of the roster just isn't that great. They have a lot of work to do. And I didn't love the moves that they made. Now, getting Trae Young without having to give up a pick was awesome. That was great for them. And Anthony Davis, if he ends up playing for them, that's cool. I don't think he will. But if you compare him with Alex Sarr next season, that's not a bad look. If Trae Young is running year one, you're still not going to make the play-in. But there is something starting to go there. Keyshawn George is a part of it too. They have some guys that just haven't panned out. Bub Carrington has not been the athletic guard and the playmaker that some people thought he could be. That has not worked out at all. Trey Johnson and Justin Champagnie are serviceable. Bilal Coulibaly has been a total disaster, to be completely honest with you. He's shooting 3 threes a game, and he's shooting at 27%, only 40% from the floor, averaging 10 points. And this is a guy they took relatively high in the draft. So that hasn't played out for them at all, and that's really unfortunate. But it just kind of sums up how the Wizards have been the last few years. They've continued to struggle. We're looking at 16-41, 13 in the Eastern Conference. They're going to ride out the rest of the year, and we're going to see what happens. They're going to hope to land somewhere nice again in the lottery, but history would say that that's probably not very likely, considering the fact that it seems like the worst teams always end up not ending up with the best picks. So, I don't know. This Wizards team is bad. They're going to continue to be bad for a couple of years, but maybe it just gets a little bit better next year if Trae Young and Anthony Davis can stay healthy. But those are two guys who have pretty poor injury records considering the last few years. And that's also even assuming that Anthony Davis or Trae Young. Trae Young seems like he wants to be there, but I don't think Anthony Davis wants to be in Washington. I think he really doesn't want to be in Washington, actually. So I don't know how well that's even going to play out for them if he chooses to play for them. But at the end of the day, even if he wants to play, you're only going to get so many games out of him. That it just isn't really the greatest move for them. I understand the value of the trade seemed not too bad considering what they had to give up and what they got out of it, but I certainly don't think it was the greatest move for them. When they had to give up. They gave up very little for him. It was Chris Middleton and Marvin Bagley, who weren't really doing all that much for this Wizards team anyway, so it's a high upside, low downside trade, so I guess I get it, but I don't know if you are really considering or really thinking that is going to be a big change for your franchise at this point. I think they're going to have to continue to ride it out, and they're going to have to start drafting well at some point. They hit on Alex Sarr, but they have missed on several picks down the stretch the last few years, and it's been really rough for Washington, and it's going to continue to be like that. So that is the Southeast Division done, however. Let me know what you guys think. Am I correct? Am I crazy? Please let me know. Drop a like if you'd like, and if you aren't subscribed, that would be nice of you as well. But yeah, that is the end of the Eastern Conference, not just this division, but the whole Eastern Conference is done. I will try to get the Western Conference videos out as well. But I thank you all for watching, and have a blessed day.